From the tough streets of Far Rockaway to the battlefields overseas and the prison yards that tested every ounce of strength, two voices rise, Stryker, Fice. Together, they bring you the truth, the pain, the healing. This is W.A.R. We're all recovering. Viewer discretion advised.
Good afternoon. This your boy Stryker. Welcome to your very first episode of W.A.R. We're all recovering. I'm your host. Normally I have my brother, my co-host, Fice here with me. But this is the very first episode. He's not here. I'll keep it real. He's getting adjusted. Little stage fright. He'll be alright. He'll be here the next episode though. I'll make sure of it. I want to make sure he comes on to give y'all, his input and his story and everything. And, he's a real good asset to the team, and he'll give you his best, I promise. Trust me. When he joins, you'll see why this podcast wouldn't be complete without him. But I didn't want you, to wait, so I decided to come on. I wanted to drop this for 9/11. Seemed like everybody forgot about 9/11, but I didn't. I thought that, dropping it today would be real significant, and symbolic with 9/11. I wanted to start this journey with you because this podcast is something it's been on my heart for so long. The idea behind war is simple. We're all recovering. Everybody, no matter who you are, where you're from, what you've been through, we're all trying to heal from something. You feel me? Some people are recovering from addiction, some are recovering from trauma, some from prison, some from war, some from loss. I could relate to the majority of that, well, all of it really. This podcast is about those stories and then some. It's about telling the truth, being real, and building community through honesty. And today, I want to share with you where I come from, why this podcast matters. I like to call it a fobcast. All my military folks know what a fob is. If you know, you know. Why it matters to me so much and what you can expect moving forward. Alright? So why we call this podcast war? For me and Fice, the word war means more than just fighting battles overseas or in the street. It's about the battles inside, the battles nobody sees, the scars we carry, the pain we bury, the fight to get up every day and keep going. It's a struggle. When I say we're all recovering, I mean we all got something. Some of us are recovering from broken homes. Some are recovering from losing friends and family. Some are recovering from choices we made that landed us in tough situations. Some are recovering from the weight of things we never asked for. Trauma, abuse, violence. Growing up in Far Rockaway, that's all I seen constantly. And that's why we here, to make space for those stories, to remind people that you're not alone. If you're listening right now, I want you to know, whatever you're fighting through, you're not the only one. And that's what war is all about. I'm trying not to get too, I should have bought me a box of Kleenexes, this hit home. I'm going to have that up here next time, the war box, the war Kleenexes, you feel me? Let me tell you a little bit about me. Since I'm asking you to trust me with your time, I'm going to give you, the real about me. I'm going to open up. That's what it's all about. I grew up in Far Rockaway, Queens. You know, if you know, you know. If you don't, research it. I was born in Brooklyn. If you know anything about Far Rock, you know it's not easy. Violence was normal. You know, hearing gunshots wasn't strange. You know, actually hearing gunshots helped me sleep a little bit, if I'm being honest. Losing people, whether to the streets or to prison, drugs, part of life. You know, I'm gonna keep it a bill with you. I'm gonna keep it 100. Growing up like that shapes you. It makes you hard, but it also leaves you with a lot of pain. You don't really know how to deal with it. You know, you don't know how to deal. For me, I thought the army might be my way out. So, what I did, you know, I left college. You know, I was in college in Brooklyn, and I enlisted. And I spent 15 years serving. I deployed downrange to Iraq twice. You know, I'm gonna get real gritty into the story about that later. You know, my veterans know, my deployed veterans know. You know, now let me tell you something. You know, they don't put in the commercials. War doesn't leave you when you come home. No matter what they want to tell you, you know, it doesn't. You bring it back with you. The memories, the images that the mind just not supposed to see. Things you see down over there, over, you know, downrange, that's what we call it. Your mind is not supposed to see. You know, it can't process it. You know, the memories, the images, like I said, the PTSD, survivor's guilt, moral injury, the feeling that you crossed lines you never thought you would. When I came back, I was carrying all of that, and I didn't know how to let it go. I tried to push through it. I tried to act like I was fine, you know, all hunky-dory, and, you know, but the truth is, I wasn't. You know, it was just another, you know, deployment, more training, you know, everything. So I didn't really have time to process it. It took me years to finally admit I needed help. You know, it took programs. Aspire, shout out to Aspire. Aspire did so much. I get into it more about Aspire later. But that was a program I went to here in San Diego that changed my life completely. The staff, the whole program, the works, everything just amazing. You know, put me back on that path to, you know, a brighter future, to, you know, recovery. But I get more into Aspire later. Most importantly, conversations, you know, with other vets, you know, other people, just talking to other people who've been through it. That, you know, that's when I started to realize I'm not broken. I'm not alone. I'm recovering. You feel me? I'm recovering. Look, I got the camera shaking and everything. I'm getting emotional again. And that's why I'm sitting here right now. Not because I have it all figured out, but because I want to share what I've learned and also keep learning from others. That's what this podcast is for. You know? So what can you expect from war? You're probably asking yourself. What can I expect from this podcast? Why war? Well, I'll tell you why war, my friend. Every week, me and Fice are we're gonna sit down and talk about real life. You know, no gimmicks, none of that fancy stuff. You know, real business, real shit. You know, real gritty, grimy shit. You know, we're going to talk about the streets, about prison, about military, about trauma, about recovery, about everything in between. Trust me, it's going to go down here on war. You know, we'll bring on guests who have stories to tell. Yeah, we're going to have, you know, nice guests, you know, special guests, all that. Real close friends to me and Fice, you know, people who survived and made it through it, you know, veterans, formerly incarcerated men and women, people who've battled addiction, people from the neighborhood, you know, people who've seen things and lived to tell about it, you know. It's not going to be sugar-coated. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be honest and real, you know. Sometimes it'll be heavy. Sometimes it'll be funny. Definitely funny. We're going to have some funny times. I'm telling you, Fice is a comedian. People say I'm a little funny myself, and, you know, we'll see. But it'll always be about the truth. That's what matters. And the goal is simple: to build connection, to build a community, you know, and to let people know you're not crazy. You know, I'm not crazy. You're not alone. I'm not alone. You're not weak. I'm not weak. You know, you're human, and humans recover. You know, it's going to take time. It's going to take time. So that's it for the very first episode. You know, I want to thank you for being here with me today. You know, this podcast, you know, is something that means a lot to me. I'm getting choked up again. And I'm grateful you gave me your time. My brother Fice is still getting adjusted, but when he's back, you're going to hear a whole other side of recovery. His story, his voice, his perspectives are powerful. And together, we're going to bring you the realest conversations possible. Until then, I want to leave you with this. We're all recovering. Every single one of us. You might not see it when you're scrolling on social media. You might not hear it when people put in their tough face, you know. But behind the curtain, behind that smile, everybody's fighting a battle. Believe it. Believe it. And the fact that you're still here, still breathing, still pushing, you know, still pushing, that means you're winning. So thank you again for rocking with me. Make sure you subscribe. Share this with somebody who needs to hear it. And join us next time. This is Stryker signing off. And remember, stay sturdy.
Thanks for listening to W.A.R. We're All Recovering with Stryker and Fice. New episodes every week. Remember, stay sturdy.